When you have a child with a disability, you know that they value the speech therapy, occupational therapy,
Yep.
in person. And they wanted my son to wear a mask and a face shield and sit behind plexiglass for 8 to 10 hours a day. And I couldn't believe it because I'm thinking to myself, how can he learn? He reads lips. He's shut off from the world. So for Fauci to turn around and to say he was wrong, I know he was wrong. So
Yeah.
I pray that parents don't forget. I'm going to remember and to
That
tell
we
other
want to
parents,
move
look,
to Dr. Fauci. So we have special guests with us tonight, which I'm so excited about. Moms for Liberty co-founder Tina Decsovich and the director of national engagement, Tia Bess. All right, hello, ladies. How are you tonight?
doing great.
Dear
Good.
Douglas.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, who else could we have on
Right.
to talk about the news with Dr. Fauci? So he has been all over the news recently. He acknowledged on Tuesday that shuttering schools for months during the COVID pandemic was a mistake. A reversal for the former presidential chief medical advisor who became the most influential alarmist during the pandemic, or what we call here on Pop and Politics.
Scamdemic.
Right. And so I wanted to get you all response to him before you begin. I want you to take a look at this. This is clip number 3 of Dr. Fauci.
To school, there are some areas where the level may be low, but not absent and maybe a little troublesome. You might want to modify the schedule, a hybrid, part online, part in person, morning, afternoon, alternating days, whatever it is that the local authorities. And that there may be some areas that the level of virus is so high that it would not be prudent to bring the children back to school. So you can't make one statement about bringing children back to school in this country. It depends on where you are. And we've got to be very flexible.
So that was him back in 2021, I believe. Again, pushing for the schools to be closed. What are you guys' thoughts on his reversal now?
Here, Tina.
Well, in 2020, I was sitting on a school board here in Florida as schools were closed, and we were debating for hours, 14-hour meetings, plus day after day, trying to figure out if it was safe to open schools. I was fighting hard to get our kids back in schools. And I will tell you again and again, the debates and the discussions all centered around what the CDC wanted, what Dr. Fauci had recommended. And time again, they wanted schools closed. They wanted masks on children. They wanted them all sitting 6 feet apart in the same direction, not able to talk during lunch. The types of things they were putting on children as parents, we all knew that this is not good for kids. But Dr. Fauci didn't care what was good for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Shirley, what is your response to that? I mean, it's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, again, I call it scamdemic for a reason because, like you, Tina, in some way, I was really protesting here, not just nationally, but certainly in Maryland. And from the beginning, I just knew that these mandates were a huge overreach, if you can even use huge and overreach at the same sentence when you're describing bureaucracy, right? It's kind of redundant. But Dr. Fauci, even some of the governors, certainly the bureaucracy at the federal level, and let me say this, as much as I love the man, I voted for him twice and will be doing so again. I was angry with Trump because he started allowing this and he did not get rid of these people soon enough, if at all. But this overreach still has ramifications that we're seeing and that we are experiencing with young people and with just general mistrust of our government institutions.
Yeah, and speaking of the ramifications that we've seen in children because of this overreach, school lockdowns caused massive learning loss across the country among K through 12 students. In 2022, 8th graders had the lowest U.S. history scores on record and among the lowest civic scores. Same with math and reading scores have suffered over the pandemic, according to the Department of Education. Math scores plummeted among among 4th and 8th graders in almost every state, and reading scores have also sunken across the country, erasing the last 3 decades of progress. Now, Tia, I know you are a mom and felt the impact of this, or at least you guys, you're in Florida, is that right?
Yes, I'm in Florida. Yes.
Okay, so you weren't as closed down as the rest of the country, but what are your thoughts on Fauci's flip-flop on this subject?
Okay. First of all, I'm fed up with all of it because I have a special needs child. That's in 2019, 2020. I was fighting the school board. You know, I had a son on the autism spectrum. He was speech and hearing delayed. And I just want to know, when is my son going to be allowed to go back to school to receive in-seat services? You know, when you have a child with a disability, you know that they value the speech therapy, occupational therapy, in person. And they wanted my son to wear a mask and a face shield and sit behind plexiglass for 8 to 10 hours a day. And I couldn't believe it because I'm thinking to myself, how can he learn? He reads lips. He's shut off from the world. So for Fauci to turn around and to say he was wrong, I know he was wrong. Who does that to special needs kids, let alone all of our kids?
Absolutely. And he's now, and you see people in the media, his supporters and pundits saying, well, they didn't know, they didn't have the information available that we have now in order to say that this was wrong for them to close down schools. What do you say to that, Tina?
Oh, I have a lot to say to that. If I, as a school board member with no medical background whatsoever, I reached out to local surgeons. I reached out to local doctors of all types. We interviewed everybody we could, and we gathered information. And the first thing they told us is this is an airborne virus, and masks, especially masks that aren't N95s, that are homemade, are doing nothing. They are actually holding it. They are trapping some of the germs, and our moms and their kids were showing up with gum diseases in their mouths, mouth infections, MRSA on their face. Like, it didn't take a rocket scientist, a PhD, or a doctor degree to see very quickly what was going on with the decisions they were forcing on our children. So, you know, it's appalling that they're hiding behind the excuses that we didn't know. We knew. We were looking at other countries that were months and months ahead of us, that were already learning that kids were not being affected the way adults were, that kids needed to be in school. I mean, you just said that you're in Maryland. Baltimore, 13 of their schools, 0 kids can do math in 13 of their schools. They had no business shutting those schools for those children. Some of these children, Condoleezza Rice, you talked about her in your opening. She spoke also today about this exact thing. Some of these children will never be able to read now. If you're not reading on grade level by 3rd and 4th grade, and you kept those schools closed for 2 years, these kids will never read. There's no excuse. You know what? Moms have very long memories when it comes to harming their children, and they will not forget this.
Yeah, I hope so. I pray so. And Shelley, I mean, this was a blatant rejection of not only common sense, but science.
Exactly.
This science has been around for a very long time, especially as Tina mentioned, for masking and things like that. We know children are resilient. We know their immune systems are much stronger than elderly people. They ignored the science. Do you think this was intentional?
Oh, it was intentional. Initially, or when the scamdemic first started, and even a couple years later, I said maybe the first 30 days, the first 2 weeks to 30 days, I can give some grace for that because it was new. People were sick. People were dying, things like that. But never in the history of, certainly not in America, were young people, healthy people, locked down, told to lock down and stay behind closed doors and plexiglass. These are the people who should have been outside. They should have been ripping and running all the more, if not more than what they were. They certainly should not have had masks. And early in the administration, I cannot think of this man's last name to save my life. The admiral, the public health admiral, Jerome something, and Fauci types, and even the female, I forget her name too, the woman that was always on camera with him. But they told us, don't go out and buy a mask. You don't need a mask. The masks don't work. Save your money. That's what they told us, right? Just, basic hand hygiene, which really 99% of viruses are spread that way anyway, right? So they told us these quote unquote experts. Not only that, when they were presented with equal and more superior experts saying, whoa, pump the brakes, what did they do? They went on a conspiracy. This is what I call the scam. They went on a conspiracy and a scam to censor these people, to make these people look like idiots, that they had no skills, all because they were not carrying the government talking points.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tia, you mentioned, the effects that this has had on your children, and especially children across the country with, special needs and things like that. Do you believe parents are remembering this? Because we have an election coming up, and I know you guys are not political, but Biden is still hailing Fauci as this guru. I mean, I personally believe he should be behind bars. What are your thoughts on this as we come up on an election? Are parents remembering what our kids have to go through for this time period?
Well, for me, I know that it's something that I would definitely remember. And I'm going to do my job to keep on educating and empowering parents across the United States. That's my mission as the National Director of Engagement, to let parents know, we can't forget. I have a daughter right now, she has asthma. And she's like, Mom, can you please keep on fighting? Because I don't want the mask to come back. If you've been to Florida, it is not possible to wear a mask in the state of Florida to do PE, sit over your mouth and your nose. You just can't. You're going to have a heat stroke. Yeah. So I pray that parents don't forget. I'm going to remember and to tell other parents, look, our kids, they're suffering with mental health issues. Anyone who has a child that has a disability, for my son, he was 2 years behind verbally. Because of the shutdowns, he was behind even 2 more years. And I'm thinking, what can I do as a parent? I got empowered. I joined Moms for Liberty. And ever since then, I've been speaking up, speaking out.
Okay. Absolutely. And, I have been following you guys really probably since the pandemic, the lockdowns. I've been following you all and what you are doing in schools, not only educating us on these types of things with Dr. Fauci, but just with the reading and these books, the sexualization of children. I love you guys. I personally think that Moms for Liberty and what you all do is probably one of the best organizations we've seen in a very long time. Can you just talk about what you guys are doing and what we as parents need to be aware of in general, not just with Dr. Fauci, but in general, what should we be aware of going forward?
Yeah, I will gladly do that. So as a former school board member, a mom of multiple children, and a grandmom now, or a Gigi of even more children, I can tell you the most important thing parents can do right now is be plugged into the local public education system. And I don't mean just volunteering in your classroom, although you should be doing that, volunteering to read to students and help out in the school. You need to be involved in the policy portion. That means checking up on your school district. What are they doing? What policies are they setting? What rights are they stepping on? What books are they adopting to put in your child's classroom and in their school? No longer can you trust that they have their best interests. You have to check every assignment. You have to look in that backpack. And of course, you have to join a Moms for Liberty chapter, because that's what we do as a whole. We work together so that it's all not, on one parent. We work together to review the textbooks, to check out the public school libraries, and to make sure policies are not stepping on parental rights. Because I'll tell you what, the government is taking more and more of those rights away, and it is starting at the local public school system. And once those rights are gone, it is going to be very hard to get them back. And so parents have to unify and stand up together and say, no more, not my child, not again.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. Well, thank you all for coming on tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you for that. You have an open invitation to come on to Poppin' Politics.
Yes.
And if you are in Maryland, we'd love for you to come in studio and chat with us.
That would be wonderful. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank
you so much.
All right. Take care. All right. So she was actually absolutely spot on about parental rights and their overreach, this bureaucracy, bureaucratic overreach that we're seeing, not just on the local level, but across the country on a majority of issues.
Absolutely. Again, I get called a radical or what an anarchist a lot. I've gotten called those things because I really do advocate for less government, smaller government, because, quote from Dennis Prager, the bigger the government, government, the smaller the citizen. It's just that simple.
And we see that they do not have our best interest at heart.
Nope.
They don't. They don't have our best interest at heart. And not only that, they misinform and now blatantly lie
all the time.
Yeah. And that moves us on to Morning Joe.